In the vast emptiness of space, where stars flickered like distant candles, an alien species known as the Valith drifted silently through the void. The Valith were ancient beings, their civilization older than most planets in the galaxy. They prided themselves on their technological superiority and believed they had nothing to fear from any other race. But one day, everything changed. It began when their long-range sensors detected something unusual, a massive object floating near the edge of a dead star system. At first, the Valith dismissed it as debris, or perhaps the remains of a failed colony ship. But as their scanners focused, they realized this was no ordinary vessel. It was a warship, sleek and menacing, bristling with weapons and glowing faintly with energy. Its design was unlike anything they had ever seen before. This was humanity's Invincible, though the Valith did not yet know its name, or the danger it represented. The Valith's leader, Scifi, ordered her scientists to scan the ship thoroughly. Using their advanced quantum technology, they probed every inch of the mysterious craft. What they found shocked them. The ship's outer hull was scarred from countless battles, yet it still functioned perfectly. Beneath the surface, intricate systems worked tirelessly to repair damage and optimize performance. Nanobots swarmed across the metal, sealing cracks and reinforcing weak points. It was as if the ship itself was alive, healing and adapting to survive. But that wasn't all. Inside the ship, the scans revealed even more astonishing details. Dozens of humans moved about, working together with precision and purpose. Their faces showed determination, even in the face of unknown threats. The Valith couldn't understand why these creatures seemed so confident. Humans were physically weaker than many species in the galaxy, yet here they were, commanding a machine far beyond what the Valith thought possible. Most alarming of all was the ship's arsenal. The Valith discovered rows of weapons capable of unleashing destruction on a planetary scale. There were missiles tipped with antimatter, drones controlled by artificial intelligence, and strange devices labeled only as Project Phoenix. Even the Valith's greatest minds couldn't decipher exactly what Project Phoenix was, but its energy signature suggested immense power, perhaps enough to wipe out entire civilizations. As the data poured in, fear began to spread among the Valith. For centuries, they had dominated the galaxy through brute force and cold logic, but this human warship defied everything they knew. It wasn't just a tool of war, it was a symbol of resilience, creativity, and hope. These humans didn't rely solely on machines, they relied on each other. Their unity and adaptability made them unpredictable, and unpredictability terrified the Valith. Scifi called an emergency meeting with her advisors. "This is no ordinary threat," she said, her voice sharp with urgency. "Their technology rivals ours, and their spirit. It is something we cannot comprehend. If they become aware of us, we may not survive." Her word hung heavy in the air. Some of her advisors agreed with her assessment, while others argued that the humans could be valuable allies. But one thing was certain: the Valith could no longer ignore the presence of this strange warship. Whatever happened next would determine the fate of both species. Meanwhile, aboard the Invincible, Captain Alina Ruiz stood quietly on the bridge, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. She didn't know it yet, but her small crew of humans had already left an indelible mark on the galaxy and sparked a chain reaction that would change everything. To be continued. The decision to send a delegation was unprecedented for the Valith. For centuries, they had interacted with other species only through drones, probes, or overwhelming force. The idea of meeting face-to-face filled many with unease. Yet, as Scifi reminded the Council, humanity's resilience and willingness to share knowledge proved they were unlike any species the Valith had encountered before. "We must approach this carefully," Scifi warned, her voice still laced with suspicion. "If this is a trap, we cannot afford to walk into it blindly." Calivor nodded. "Agreed. But we must also show them that we are not merely machines of war. If we wish to build trust, we must reveal ourselves, our true selves." After much deliberation, 3 representatives were chosen. Calivor himself, representing diplomacy and curiosity. Zirin, whose analytical mind could decipher human intentions. And an elder Sintharch named Vera, whose wisdom and experience would serve as a stabilizing force. Together, they boarded a sleek Violet vessel designed for close encounters, a rare sight in their history. On board the Invincible, Captain Alina Ruiz received confirmation of the Violet's arrival. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from anticipation. This was the moment humanity had been waiting for, a chance to prove that coexistence was possible, even with a species as enigmatic as the Violet. "Prepare the docking bay," Alina ordered, "and make sure security teams are on standby. Friendly doesn't mean careless." As the Violet ship approached, its design became clear. Unlike the cold, angular vessels typical of their kind, this one shimmered with organic curves, blending technology and artistry in a way that hinted at their dual nature. When the airlock connected, Alina led her team, including Marcus Hale and Dr. Amarapatul, to greet their alien visitors. The Violet emerged slowly, their forms luminous and fluid, shifting between translucent and solid states. They moved gracefully, exuding an aura of both power and caution. Calivor stepped forward first, his glowing presence steady. "We are here to understand," he said, his voice resonating softly, "to see if peace is possible." Alina extended a hand, unsure if the gesture would be understood. To her surprise, Calivor mirrored the action, his form solidifying briefly to touch her palm. It was a small act, but it carried immense weight, a bridge spanning 2 vastly different worlds. Inside the conference room, the atmosphere was tense yet hopeful. Alina introduced her crew, explaining their roles aboard the Invincible. In turn, the Violet shared fragments of their history, how they had risen to dominance through logic and efficiency, suppressing emotion to maintain order. But they admitted, reluctantly, that their methods had left them isolated, and perhaps stagnant. "They fear change," Zirin explained, his voice quieter than the others. "But your adaptability, it fascinates us." Dr. Amara Patel leaned forward. "Change isn't always bad. Sometimes it's necessary for growth. Look at Earth. We nearly destroyed ourselves, but we learned. We evolved." Vera, the elder Sintharch, studied Amara intently. "And what did you sacrifice to survive?" Amara hesitated, then replied honestly. "Comfort, certainty, but we gained something greater, hope, a belief that tomorrow can be better than today." The room fell silent as the Violet absorbed her words. For beings who had long dismissed emotion as weakness, the concept of hope was profound and unsettling. As discussions continued, tensions flared over differences in values and priorities. Conzyphilis, monitoring the meeting remotely, grew increasingly agitated. "This is folly," she transmitted to Calivor. "They speak of chaos disguised as progress." Calivor responded calmly. "Perhaps chaos is simply another form of creation. Without risk, there is no reward." Meanwhile, Zirin noticed something remarkable. Despite their differences, both sides were learning. Humanity's ingenuity intrigued the Violet, while the aliens' mastery of quantum mechanics inspired the humans. Slowly, mutual respect began to take root. But just as the meeting seemed to gain momentum, alarms blared throughout the Invincible. Sensors detected an unknown object approaching rapidly, a massive fleet, far larger than anything either side had anticipated. Alina turned to Calivor, her expression grim. "Is this your doing?" Calivor shook his head, his glow dimming slightly. "No, someone, or something, else has found us." To be continued. On the Violet homeworld, a planet cloaked in shimmering crystalline spires that reflected light like prisms, the council chamber buzzed with tension. The Sintharchs, the highest-ranking leaders of the Violet, had gathered to discuss their next move. Holographic projections of the Invincible hovered above the polished floor, rotating slowly as data streamed across its surface. Every detail of the human warship was being analyzed, dissected, and debated. Syntharchxethalis stood at the center of the room, her translucent body glowing faintly with resolve. "We cannot afford hesitation," she declared, her voice echoing through the chamber. "This vessel represents a threat unlike any we have faced before. Its technology is advanced, but more concerning is the behavior of its crew. They are unpredictable, driven by emotions rather than logic." Her words sent ripples of unease through the council. Emotions were foreign to the Vailith, who had long abandoned such primitive traits in favor of pure rationality. To them, feelings like hope, fear, or loyalty were weaknesses, flaws that could destabilize civilizations. Yet here was evidence that humanity thrived because of these very qualities. Calvor, another prominent Syntharch, stepped forward. Unlike Xethalis, he radiated calmness, his form shifting subtly as he interfaced with the holograms. "Perhaps unpredictability is not inherently dangerous," he suggested. "Their adaptability has allowed them to survive countless challenges. Shouldn't we consider learning from them instead of destroying them?" Xethalis glared at him. "Learning? From primitives? You would risk our dominance for curiosity." Before Calivor could respond, a junior analyst named Zurin spoke up timidly. His small frame seemed out of place among the towering figures of the Syntharchs. "There's something else," he said, his voice barely audible. "I've been studying their neural interfaces. While primitive compared to ours, they exhibit connections, loyalty between crew members, sacrifice, even joy." The room fell silent. Joy. The concept felt alien to the Vailith, almost unsettling. For centuries, they had suppressed emotion in pursuit of efficiency. Yet now, confronted with a species that embraced it, they couldn't deny its power. Meanwhile, aboard the Invincible, Captain Alina Ruiz paced the bridge, her sharp eyes scanning the monitors around her. Her crew worked diligently, repairing damage sustained during their last skirmish near Proxima Centauri. Though no one had seen any sign of the mysterious scanners, Alina knew they were being watched. "Anything new?" she asked Lieutenant Marcus Hale, her tactical officer. Marcus shook his head. "Whoever's out there is good at staying hidden. But I've traced faint energy signatures consistent with quantum scanning technology. Whoever they are, they're advanced." Alina frowned. Advanced didn't necessarily mean friendly. She turned to Dr. Amara Patel, the ship's brilliant engineer. "How much longer until we're fully operational?" "Another 12 hours, Amara replied. "But Captain, there's something odd about the scans. It's like they're trying to understand us. Not just our tech, but us. They're looking at how we think, how we act." Alina nodded thoughtfully. Humanity had always been underestimated by others. Their strength lay not in brute force, but in their ability to adapt, innovate, and unite. If these aliens wanted to learn about humanity, they'd soon discover exactly what made them special. Back on the Vailith homeworld, the council remained divided. Scifilis pushed for immediate action, urging the deployment of their fleet to neutralize the threat. But Calivor argued for caution. "If we attack without understanding them, we risk provoking a conflict we may not win," he warned. "And if we destroy them, we lose the chance to uncover secrets that could benefit us." As the debate raged, Zirin quietly accessed additional data from the scans. He noticed something peculiar, a pattern in the way the humans interacted with each other. When one crew member struggled, others stepped in to help. When decisions needed to be made, they trusted their leader implicitly. It wasn't just teamwork, it was unity born from shared purpose. Zirin hesitated before speaking again. What if their emotions aren't a flaw? What if they're a strength? Hope drives them to keep fighting, even when odds are against them. Fear makes them cautious, but also creative. And loyalty binds them together. His words struck a chord. For the first time, some of the Syntharchs began to question their assumptions. Could humanity's so-called weaknesses actually be advantages? Hours later, the council adjourned without reaching a decision. But as Calivor walked alone through the crystalline halls of the Citadel, he couldn't shake the image of Captain Alina Ruiz standing tall on her bridge, surrounded by her loyal crew. There was something inspiring about their determination, and terrifying about its implications. Little did the Vailith know, humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology. It was their indomitable spirit. To be continued. The Vailith Council remained locked in indecision, their crystalline citadel humming with tension. Syntharch Xythalis paced the chamber, her translucent form shimmering with frustration. "We cannot waste more time debating," she snapped. "Every moment we delay gives them an opportunity to discover us. Action must be taken now." Calivor stood opposite her, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to her agitation. "Rushing into conflict without understanding our enemy is reckless," he countered. "If humanity's adaptability is as formidable as it seems, they may have already anticipated our response. Attacking blindly could lead to disaster." Xythalis glared at him. "And doing nothing will leave us vulnerable. Are you willing to gamble the survival of our species on your misguided optimism?" Before Calivor could reply, alarms blared throughout the Citadel. A junior analyst rushed into the chamber, panic evident in his voice. "Syntharx, the human warship, it's moving." On board the Invincible, Captain Alina Ruiz gave the order that had been weighing on her mind for hours. "Bring the engines online," she commanded. "We're leaving this sector." Her crew sprang into action. Lieutenant Marcus Hale monitored the ship's systems, while Dr. Amara Patel ensured the repairs were holding steady. Despite their earlier uncertainty about being watched, Alina decided caution wasn't getting them anywhere. They needed answers, and staying put wasn't going to provide them. As the massive warship roared to life, its powerful engines lighting up the surrounding void, the humans felt a renewed sense of purpose. For too long, they'd been drifting aimlessly after their last battle. Now, they were taking control again, even if it meant stepping into the unknown. But what they didn't realize was that their departure triggered something unexpected among the Vailith. Back on the alien homeworld, the Council erupted into chaos. The sudden movement of the Invincible confirmed their worst fears. The humans were aware of their presence, or at least suspected it. Xythalis seized the opportunity to push her agenda. "This proves my point. They are preparing to strike. We must act first." Calivor, however, remained skeptical, or they're simply continuing their journey. Moving does not necessarily mean hostility. Zerin, the junior analyst, interjected hesitantly. "There's another possibility. Their actions suggest confidence, perhaps even defiance. They know we're watching, yet they proceed without hesitation." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity wasn't behaving like a typical prey species. Instead of retreating or hiding, they were advancing boldly, almost daring the Vailith to make a move. It was a calculated risk, one that showcased both bravery and intelligence. Deep within the Citadel's archives, Calivor accessed ancient records of encounters with other civilizations. Most had crumbled under the Vailith's might, either through conquest or assimilation. But none had displayed the resilience or ingenuity of humanity. As he studied the scans of the Invincible once more, he noticed something new, a subtle shift in their energy signatures. It hinted at activation protocols, possibly for experimental weapons. Project Phoenix, Calivor murmured to himself. Whatever it was, it represented humanity's final card, a contingency plan designed to tip the scales in their favor. If the Vailith underestimated them now, they might unleash something catastrophic. Meanwhile, aboard the Invincible, Alina gathered her senior officers in the briefing room. She laid out her plan. Instead of fleeing, they would use their movements to draw out whoever, or whatever, was watching them. "They've been scanning us for hours," Alina explained. "They know we're here, so let's give them something to think about. Marcus, prepare the antimatter cannons. Amara, keep those nanobots ready in case they try anything sneaky. And communications. Start broadcasting a message, simple, clear, and non-threatening." What should the message say? asked Ensign Tessa Monroe, the communications officer. Elena smiled faintly. Tell them who we are. Let them know we're not looking for a fight, but we won't back down if they force our hand. As the broadcast signal pulsed into space, carrying humanity's message of peace tempered with strength, the Vailith Council faced a critical decision. Scifi argued for immediate retaliation, while Kelivor urged restraint. But Zirin offered a third option: respond to the transmission, establishing contact rather than escalating tensions. For the first time, doubt crept into Scifi's resolve. Could diplomacy succeed where violence might fail? Or was humanity's boldness merely a facade masking deeper dangers? Unbeknownst to both sides, the next move would determine whether this encounter ended in war or understanding. To be continued. The decision came down to a single vote. In the crystalline council chamber of the Vailith homeworld, Sintharch Scythelis stood firm, her voice sharp and unyielding. We cannot trust these humans, she insisted. Their message is a deception, a ploy to lower our guard. If we respond, we risk exposing ourselves. Kelivor countered with equal determination. And if we do nothing, we waste an opportunity to learn. Her broadcast shows they are not mindless aggressors. They seek dialogue, not destruction. Zirin, the junior analyst who had grown increasingly vocal, added his perspective. They've already proven themselves adaptable and resourceful. Ignoring their attempt at communication could provoke them into hostility. We must at least acknowledge their presence. After hours of heated debate, the council voted narrowly in favor of responding, but cautiously. A probe would be sent to establish minimal contact, transmitting a simple reply: "We hear you." On board the Invincible, Ensign Tessa Monroe monitored the communications array with bated breath. For hours there had been silence, no response to their broadcast. The crew began to wonder if their message had fallen on deaf ears. Then suddenly, the screens flickered. A brief signal appeared, fragmented but clear enough to decipher. 3 words written in basic universal code. "They heard us," Tessa whispered, her voice trembling with excitement. She turned to Captain Elena Ruse, who stood nearby, arms crossed. "Captain, they're out there, and they're listening." Elena's lips curved into a faint smile. "Good. Let's see how far this goes." She turned to Marcus Hale. "Keep weapons ready, just in case, but no aggressive moves unless they force our hand." As the crew worked to analyze the signal's origin, Elena couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. Humanity had faced countless adversaries over the centuries, many far stronger than themselves. Yet here they were, standing toe-to-toe with an unknown species, refusing to back down. Meanwhile, the Vailith observed the human reaction with growing unease. Through their probe, they watched as the crew of the Invincible discussed the message. What struck them most was the lack of fear among the humans. Instead, they saw determination and even curiosity. It was as if the humans welcomed the challenge of meeting a new species. Sintharch Kelivor studied the footage closely. "Look at them," he said to Zirin. "Even now they prepare for any outcome, peace or war. Their adaptability is remarkable." Zirin nodded. "But what about us? Are we prepared to meet them on equal terms?" Kelivor hesitated before replying. "That depends on whether we can overcome our own fears." Back aboard the Invincible, Dr. Amara Patel made a startling discovery. While analyzing the alien signal, she noticed something unusual embedded within it, a faint trace of energy, unlike anything they'd encountered before. It pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. "Captain," Amara called out, her tone urgent. "I think this signal isn't just a message. It might be alive." Elena frowned. "What do you mean?" Amara pointed to the data scrolling across her console. "It's emitting patterns consistent with biological processes. Whatever sent this, it's not just machinery. There's intelligence behind it, maybe even consciousness." Elena's mind raced. If the Vailith, or whoever was out there, were more than machines, then diplomacy might truly be possible. But that also meant they were dealing with beings capable of emotion, fear, and perhaps even misunderstanding. As tensions mounted on both sides, Calvor took a bold step. He proposed sending a second message, this time more detailed. "Who are you?" The alarms on the Invincible wailed relentlessly as the crew scrambled to assess the situation. Lieutenant Marcus Hale monitored the screens, his fingers flying across the console. "Captain," he reported, his voice tight with urgency. "It's a fleet. Dozens of ships, maybe more. They're not Valeth." Elena Ruiz clenched her fists, her mind racing. "Can we identify them?" Marcus shook his head. "Their energy signatures don't match anything in our database. Whoever they are, they're moving fast and heading straight for us." In the conference room, the Valeth delegation reacted with equal concern. Calvor interfaced with their own sensors remotely, his glowing form flickering as data streamed through him. "This is unprecedented," he murmured. "No species in this region possesses such numbers or such technology." Zirin turned to Elena, his voice tinged with worry. "If they attack, neither of us will survive alone." Elena nodded grimly. "Then we fight together, or die apart." Back in the Valeth homeworld, Syntharch Xythalis watched the unfolding crisis with growing dread. Her earlier warnings about humanity now seemed irrelevant. The real threat came from an unknown force that dwarfed both species. For the first time, she questioned whether her rigid stance had cost them valuable time. "We must act," she told the council. "If the humans fall, so do we." Reluctantly, the council authorized reinforcements to assist the Invincible. A squadron of Valeth warships launched immediately, though it would take hours for them to reach the human vessel. Until then, the humans and the small Valeth delegation were on their own. On board the Invincible, preparations intensified. Dr. Amara Patel worked tirelessly to reroute power to the ship's defenses, while Tessa Monroe attempted to establish communication with the approaching fleet. So far, there was no response, only silence. "They're not broadcasting anything," Tessa said, frustration evident in her voice. "It's like they don't care who we are." Elena stood at the center of the bridge, her eyes scanning the monitors. "That doesn't matter. What matters is what we do next. Calvor, can your people coordinate with us?" Calvor stepped forward, his presence steady despite the tension. "Our systems are compatible. We can synchronize our weapons and shields, but only if you trust us." Elena met his gaze without hesitation. "We don't have a choice. Trust has to start somewhere." With that, the two species worked side by side, combining their technologies in ways neither had thought possible. The Valeth's quantum-based weaponry integrated seamlessly with the Invincible's advanced targeting systems, creating a hybrid defense network. Meanwhile, Dr. Amara Patel collaborated with Zirin to enhance shield resilience using Valeth algorithms. As the fleet drew closer, its sheer size became apparent. Dozens of massive vessels filled the view screen, their jagged designs exuding hostility. These ships weren't sleek or elegant. They were brutal, built for destruction. "This isn't exploration," Marcus muttered. "This is invasion." Elena took a deep breath. "All hands, battle stations. Let's show them what happens when humanity fights alongside allies." When the first wave of enemy ships opened fire, the combined efforts of the Invincible and the Valeth delegation proved devastating. The hybrid defense system deflected most of the incoming attacks, while counterstrikes crippled several enemy vessels. But the attackers kept coming, relentless and unyielding. Calvor turned to Elena, his glow dimming slightly. "They outnumber us. Even with our combined strength, we cannot hold forever." Elena's jaw tightened. "Then we make every shot count." Inspired by her determination, the crew pushed themselves to their limits. Every member of the Invincible worked in perfect harmony, their unity amplified by the Valeth's precision. Together, they fought not just for survival, but for the fragile bond they had forged. Amidst the chaos, Zirin noticed something strange about the enemy fleet. Their movements. They're coordinated, but mechanical, almost like drones. Elena frowned. You mean they're being controlled? Zirin nodded. Possibly. If we can locate the source, we might be able to disable them all at once. Alina glanced at Calivor. Can your sensors pinpoint it? It will take time, Calivor replied. But I believe we can succeed, if we buy ourselves enough of it. As the battle raged on, hope remained alive, not because victory was certain, but because humanity and the Vailith had chosen to stand together. In that moment, their alliance became more than strategy. It became proof that even the most unlikely partnerships could defy overwhelming odds. To be continued. The battle raged on, the void of space illuminated by streaks of energy and explosions as the Invincible and the Vailith delegation fought desperately against the relentless enemy fleet. Despite their combined efforts, the sheer number of attackers made it clear that time was running out. Calivor worked alongside Dr. Amara Patel in the ship's command center, analyzing the data streaming in from the Vaithal sensors. His translucent form shimmered faintly with urgency. There, he said, pointing to a cluster of coordinates on the holographic display. One of these ships is emitting a unique signal, stronger than the others. That must be the control hub. Amara nodded, her brow furrowed in concentration. If we disable that ship, the rest might lose coordination. But it's deep within their formation. Getting close will be nearly impossible. Alina Ruiz stepped forward, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. Then we'll have to punch through. Marcus, plot a course. Use everything we've got to create an opening. Marcus Hale studied the tactical map, his hands moving swiftly over the controls. It's risky, Captain. Their defenses are too tight. We'd need a distraction to draw their fire. Zirin, who had been quietly observing, spoke up hesitantly. What if I can help? My neural interface can sync with your targeting systems. If I guide the shots, we might stand a chance. Alina turned to him, surprised but grateful. Are you sure? Zirin hesitated, then nodded firmly. I've never done this before, but this is our only shot. The plan was set into motion. Using the hybrid defense network they had built together, the Invincible unleashed a barrage of coordinated attacks designed to scatter the enemy fleet. The Vailith's quantum weapons tore through shields, while humanity's precision-guided missiles struck key targets. Slowly, a narrow path began to open toward the suspected control hub. Meanwhile, Zirin interfaced directly with the ship's systems, his consciousness merging with the targeting algorithms. To everyone's amazement, his connection enhanced their accuracy dramatically. Missiles hit their marks with pinpoint precision, and shield harmonics adjusted in real time to deflect incoming fire. This is incredible, Amara whispered, watching the young Vailith analyst work. He's pushing himself to the limit. Captain Alina gripped the railing of the bridge, her eyes fixed on the view screen. Keep going, Zirin. We're almost there. As the Invincible surged forward, the enemy fleet responded with fury, launching wave after wave of attacks. The ship shuddered under the strain, but the crew held firm, each member working tirelessly to keep the vessel intact. Finally, they'd reached the control hub, a massive, hulking dreadnought bristling with cannons and glowing with ominous energy. Calivor analyzed its structure quickly. The signal originates from its core. A direct hit should disable it. But we'll need maximum power. Alina didn't hesitate. Divert all available energy to the main cannon. Let's finish this. Dr. Amara Patel rushed to reroute power, her fingers flying across the console. The lights dimmed throughout the ship as every ounce of energy was funneled into the weapon system. On the bridge, tension hung thick in the air. Ready, Marcus shouted. Fire, Alina commanded. With a deafening roar, the main cannon unleashed a beam of pure energy, striking the control hub dead center. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the enemy ship erupted in a blinding explosion, sending shockwaves rippling through the battlefield. One by one, the remaining ships faltered, their mechanical movements slowing to a halt. Without the central signal, the fleet became inert, lifeless husks drifting aimlessly in space. As the dust settled, Cheers erupted aboard the Invincible. The crew embraced one another, exhausted but triumphant. Even the Vailith delegation seemed visibly moved. Kelivor bowed slightly to Elena, a gesture of respect rarely seen among his kind. But Zarin collapsed into a chair, his form flickering weakly. Amara rushed to his side. "You pushed yourself too hard," she said gently. "But you saved us all." Zarin managed a faint smile. "Worth it," he murmured. Elena looked at the Vailith delegation, her expression softening. "We couldn't have done this without you. Together, we proved something today. That trust isn't weakness, it's strength." Kelivor nodded solemnly. "And yet, the question remains, who sent those ships, and why?" Before anyone could answer, Tessa Monroe called out from the communication station. "Captain, we're receiving a new transmission. It's different. Not from the Vailith or the enemy fleet." Elena frowned. "Put it on screen." Static filled the monitor, followed by a shadowy figure cloaked in darkness. Its voice was cold, mechanical, and unmistakably hostile. "You think this victory means anything?" it growled. "This is only the beginning." To be continued. The shadowy figure on the screen loomed larger than life, its mechanical voice sending chills through the bridge of the Invincible. "You think this victory means anything?" it repeated, each word dripping with menace. "This is only the beginning." Captain Elena Ruiz stepped forward, her voice steady despite the unease spreading among her crew. "Who are you? What do you want?" The figure's form shifted slightly, revealing glowing red eyes that pierced through the darkness. "I am the Harbinger," it declared, "and I come to cleanse the galaxy of weakness. Your defiance today has marked you as threats that will be eliminated." Before Elena could respond, the transmission cut off, leaving only static in its wake. The room fell silent, the weight of the Harbinger's words pressing down on everyone. Kelivor broke the silence first. "This changes everything," he said gravely. "If the fleet we destroyed was merely a vanguard, then a greater force is coming." Elena nodded, her mind racing. "Then we prepare, but not just us, the Vailith and humanity together. If we're going to survive what's coming, we need to unite fully." Back on the Vailith homeworld, the council convened once again. This time, however, the atmosphere was different. Syntharch Xythalis stood quietly, her earlier hostility replaced by a somber acknowledgement of reality. "We underestimated humanity," she admitted. "But now we face an enemy that threatens us both. We must adapt or perish." Kelivor seized the moment. "Adaptation begins with trust. Humanity has shown us that strength lies not in isolation, but in unity. Let us forge an alliance, not out of necessity, but out of shared purpose." The council voted unanimously to ally with humanity. It was a historic decision, one that would redefine the Vailith's place in the galaxy. Plans were set into motion to integrate human innovation with Vailith technology, creating a coalition capable of standing against the Harbinger. On board the Invincible, preparations for the next battle began immediately. Dr. Amara Patel worked alongside Zarin, who had recovered enough to assist once more, combining their knowledge to upgrade the ship's systems. Meanwhile, Marcus Hale trained the crew in new combat strategies tailored to the hybrid technology. Elena addressed her crew during a brief respite. "Today we faced an impossible enemy, and we won. But tomorrow brings an even greater challenge. Together with the Vailith, we've taken the first step towards something bigger than ourselves. Hope isn't just a word, it's a weapon. And as long as we stand united, no force in the galaxy can break us." Her words ignited a fire within the crew. They knew the road ahead would be perilous, but they also knew they weren't alone. Weeks later, the combined forces of humanity and the Vailith gathered at a designated rendezvous point, a massive space station built collaboratively, symbolizing their newfound partnership. Ships from both species formed a united fleet, ready to defend the galaxy against whatever the Harbinger might unleash. As Elena stood on the bridge of the Invincible, watching the assembled armada, she felt a sense of pride. and hope. Beside her, Calivore shimmered faintly, his presence a reminder of how far they'd come. "Do you think we're ready?" she asked softly. Calivore hesitated, then replied, "No one is ever truly ready for war. But we have something our enemies lack, the courage to fight for something greater than ourselves." In that moment, Alina realized that the true victory wasn't defeating the enemy fleet. It was proving that two vastly different species could overcome fear and mistrust to stand side by side. As the fleet moved forward into the unknown, united under a single banner, humanity and the Vailith sent a message to the Harbinger and to the galaxy. Strength lies not in domination, but in unity. Hope endures where fear falters. And together, even the darkest threats can be overcome. The end, or just the beginning. When the transmission reached the Invincible, Alina gathered her senior officers once again. "This changes things," she said. "They're asking questions now. That means they're curious, not just scared." "What do we tell them?" Marcus asked. "The truth," Alina replied firmly. "Let's show them who we are. Record a visual message. Let them see our faces, hear our voices. Show them we're not monsters." Under Alina's guidance, the crew crafted a video showcasing life aboard the Invincible, scenes of teamwork, laughter, and quiet moments of reflection. They included clips of Earth's blue skies and oceans, reminders of the home they fought so hard to protect. And finally, Alina herself appeared on camera, speaking directly to the unknown watchers. "We are humanity," she said, her voice steady and warm. "Survivors, dreamers, builders. We don't seek conflict, but we won't shy away from it either. Tell us who you are. Let's find a way forward, together." When the message reached the Vailith, the council watched in stunned silence. For the first time, they saw humanity not as a threat, but as a people driven by hope and resilience. Even Xithalis seemed shaken, though she refused to admit it. Calivore broke the silence. "This is our chance to understand them, and perhaps ourselves." As the Vailith debated their next move, one thing became clear. Humanity had already begun to change them. To be continued. The Vailith Council chamber was eerily quiet as the holographic projection of humanity's message faded into darkness. The images of the Invincible's crew, smiling, working together, and sharing moments of camaraderie, lingered in the minds of the Syntharchs. For a species that had long abandoned emotion, the display was both fascinating and unsettling. Syntharch Xithalis broke the silence first, her voice sharp but tinged with uncertainty. "This sentimentality is dangerous. It clouds judgment, breeds irrationality. Yet they wield it like a weapon." Calivore stepped forward, his form shimmering faintly as he interfaced with the data streams surrounding him. Or perhaps it is their strength, their unity, their hope. It drives them to survive against all odds. Look at their history. They rebuilt after losing their homeworld, Earth. They adapted when others would have perished. Is that not admirable? Xithalis glared at him. "Admirable. You speak as though we should emulate them. But emotions are chaotic. They lead to mistakes, to weakness. It is not weakness that defines them," Calivore countered calmly. "It is resilience. And if we wish to understand them and avoid conflict, we must acknowledge that." Zirin, who had been quietly observing the exchange, spoke up hesitantly. "There's something else. Their message wasn't just about showing who they are. It was an invitation, an olive branch. If we ignore it, we risk provoking hostility. But if we accept—" His words trailed off, leaving the council to ponder the implications. After centuries of domination through fear and logic, the idea of meeting another species on equal terms felt alien and terrifying. Meanwhile, aboard the Invincible, Captain Alina Ruiz paced the bridge, waiting for a response. Hours had passed since they sent their video message, and still there was no reply. Her crew worked tirelessly, monitoring every frequency and scanning the surrounding space for any sign of activity. "Anything yet?" Elena asked Tessa Monroe, who sat at the communications console. Tessa shook her head. Nothing new, Captain. Whoever, or whatever, they are, they're staying quiet. Elena sighed but refused to let frustration take hold. Keep trying. Send another signal if you have to. We can't afford to give up now. As she spoke, Dr. Amara Patel approached with new findings. Captain, I've been analyzing the energy traces from their earlier messages. There's something unusual, a pattern that suggests they're debating internally, like they're struggling to decide how to respond. Elena raised an eyebrow. Struggling? You mean they're divided? Amara nodded. Exactly. It's possible they're as uncertain about us as we are about them. A flicker of hope ignited within Elena. If the aliens were hesitant, then diplomacy might still prevail. She turned to Marcus Hale. Prepare a follow-up message. Keep it simple. We come in peace. Let's make sure they understand we're not looking for a fight. Back on the Vailith homeworld, the council remained deadlocked. Scythelus argued for continued caution, insisting that humanity's message could be a trap. But Kelvor pushed harder than ever for engagement. If we strike without understanding them, we risk making enemies of a species capable of unimaginable innovation. Worse, we risk losing the chance to learn from them. Finally, Zirin proposed a compromise. Send a probe, not just to observe, but to interact. Equip it with basic communication protocols. Let us test their intentions before committing fully. The council agreed, and preparations began immediately. Within hours, a sleek insect-like drone launched from the Vailith Citadel, its metallic shell glinting under the light of their twin suns. Programmed with rudimentary language capabilities, the probe carried a single directive: establish contact. On board the Invincible, alarms blared as sensors detected the approaching object. Lieutenant Marcus Hale quickly analyzed the readings. It's small, unmanned, and emitting low-level signals. Looks like some kind of reconnaissance drone. Elena nodded. Let's see what it wants. Bring it aboard, but keep security teams ready. Using the ship's tractor beam, the crew guided the probe into the hangar bay. As the airlock sealed and the atmosphere stabilized, Elena led a team to investigate. The drone hovered silently, its surface covered in intricate patterns that shifted subtly, almost like breathing. Then, a voice emanated from the device, not human, but clear enough to understand. We see you. Who are you? Elena exchanged glances with her crew before stepping forward. We are humanity. Survivors, explorers, dreamers. And you. For a moment, there was silence. Then the drone replied, its tone measured but curious. We are the Vailith, guardians of order. Tell us why you are here. Elena took a deep breath. This was it, the moment that would shape the future of both species. We're here because we refuse to be defined by fear or hatred. We seek understanding, not conquest. Can you say the same? The question hung in the air, unanswered. But as the drone transmitted the conversation back to the Vailith Council, one thing became clear. Humanity had planted a seed of doubt in their cold, logical minds. To be continued. The Vailith Council chamber erupted into chaos as the drone's transmission played back Captain Elena Ruiz's words. Her voice echoed through the crystalline hall, calm yet firm. We're here because we refuse to be defined by fear or hatred. We seek understanding, not conquest. Can you say the same? For a species that prided itself on logic and order, the question struck a nerve. Syntharch Scythelus clenched her translucent fists, her form shimmering with barely contained frustration. This is manipulation, she snapped. They seek to provoke doubt, to weaken our resolve. Kelvor, however, saw it differently. He stood quietly, his glowing presence steady and composed. No, Scythelus, they are challenging us to rise above our fears, just as they have. Is that not what guardians of order should do? Zirin nodded in agreement. Their message isn't one of aggression. It's an invitation to prove ourselves better than the conquerors we once were. Scythelus glared at both of them. And if this is a trick, if their so-called understanding is merely a ploy to gain advantage, it doesn't matter, Kelivor replied firmly. What matters is how we respond. If we act out of fear, we validate their doubts about us. But if we meet them with honesty, we may forge a bond stronger than any weapon. On board the Invincible, the crew waited anxiously for the Veilith's response. The alien drone remained motionless in the hangar bay, its patterns shifting faintly as though processing their earlier exchange. Captain Alina Ruiz paced nearby, her mind racing. "They're thinking," Marcus Hale said, breaking the silence. "Either they're deciding whether to trust us or planning their next move." Alina stopped pacing and looked at him. "Then we wait. Patience might be our best weapon right now." As they waited, Dr. Amara Patel studied the drone more closely. She noticed something intriguing, a subtle vibration emanating from its core, almost like a heartbeat. "Captain," she whispered, "I think this thing is alive. Not fully biological, but sentient." Alina frowned. "You mean it's not just a machine?" Amara nodded. "Exactly. Whoever, or whatever, the Veilith are, they blend technology and life in ways we don't understand. This could explain why they seem so cautious." Alina's expression softened. "If they're part living beings, then maybe they feel emotions too. Fear, curiosity, even hope. That gives us common ground." Hours later, the drone finally stirred. Its surface lit up with intricate patterns, and a new message emerged. "We are listening. Prove your intent." Alina wasted no time responding. Stepping closer, she spoke clearly and without hesitation. "Our intent is simple. Survival. To protect what we love and build a future worth fighting for. We don't claim to be perfect, but we strive to learn, adapt, and grow. What about you?" The drone paused, as if relaying her words back to the Veilith Council. Then came another reply. "Show us proof. Share knowledge." Alina exchanged glances with her crew. This was uncharted territory. Sharing information with an unknown species carried risks. But retreating now would undo everything they'd worked for. "Very well," Alina said. "We'll share what we can, but only if you do the same." The drone vibrated again, its patterns swirling faster. After a moment, it transmitted a stream of data, technical schematics, mathematical formulas, and fragments of what appeared to be Veilith history. The humans watched in awe as their screens filled with alien knowledge. Dr. Amara Patil immediately began analyzing the data while Tessa Monroe translated the text. "This is incredible," Amara murmured. "Their tech is far beyond ours in some areas. But there are gaps. Things they haven't figured out yet." Alina smiled faintly. "Perfect. Let's show them we have answers they need." Under her direction, the crew compiled a package of human knowledge, medical advancements, renewable energy solutions, and strategies for sustainable colonization. When the data transfer completed, the drone emitted a soft hum, almost like gratitude. Back on the Veilith homeworld, the Council reviewed the human transmission. For the first time, cracks appeared in Xythalis' rigid stance. "Their knowledge. It complements ours," she admitted reluctantly. "Perhaps cooperation is possible." Kelivor seized the opportunity. "Then let us take the next step. Send a delegation, not machines, but ourselves. Face-to-face contact will dispel mistrust." Though hesitant, the Council agreed. Humanity had crossed a threshold. They were no longer mere observers or adversaries. They were potential allies. To be continued.